I will introduce our guest. So, Freeny Yianni is the curator and owner of Clothes Gallery in Somerset. Clothes Gallery represents artists, runs exhibitions, residencies, as well as education programs. So, she started at the Listen Gallery. She worked with some incredible artists. And then, Freeny, how did you get to creating your gallery, Clothes Gallery?
A desire to work with artists was a passion of mine, and it just happened naturally. I arrived in Somerset. I found my community. I went and found the local art centres. I found the artists that were here. And I also invited those that I knew and loved from London, from Greece, from Cyprus to come and stay with me, to collaborate with me. Some of it failed, some of it worked. And I think that's what one has to remember about when you're starting out, to tell people that you're here, to point your arrows outwards and to see where it came through. And also I wanted a community, and I wanted it to be a creative one. It started out wanting to be in the countryside, wanting to be with my children, knowing I'd have to pop back to London now and again to keep myself fresh. But that was really my more difficult route to being successful in the art world. It was a difficult route I took, but it's paying off.
So, what kind of artists do you work with? What kind of media? Are they UK based? Are they international? What kind of artists do you represent?
The artists I represent are diverse. Some artists are voices that were unheard within the Listen Gallery, and I'd given them a new opportunity. So people like Anna Mossman, Jane Harris, and sadly now the late Jane Harris, because she died over lockdown, so I look after her estate. Grenville Davey, who was a Turner Prize winner, and I really looked after him for many years, and we just continued working together. And also artists that I like to look at are always ones that impress me with their art practice, and how they live their life is always something I find very interesting, and I'm endlessly fascinated.
I'm really interested to hear more about that. So, is there a particular something that you look for in the artists that you represent?
I'd say my aesthetic is usually minimal, usually based on conceptualism, which means an artwork has to also have a very clever meaning or a story that goes with it, to give it a little bit more of a history as to why it has been made and why it exists in the world. And I'd also say that I'm very keen, and it's a very good way of working with artists that look into histories of maybe places, maybe people that have made investigations around site-specific works, is always is interesting to me, because it's more relevant to working in the way that I do with artist residencies and longer burn exhibitions, rather than just working with a painter, putting their work on the walls and seeing if it will sell. I would prefer to work with, say, for instance, just recently I'm working with Lottie Scott, who's an artist working with areas of natural beauty, and her work is based on the landscape and based on nature. And I do tend to work quite a lot with artists that work with nature at their core, because of where I find myself.
So, we had a question from Lee saying, does the gallery represent international artists?
I would like to say is, let's define what we mean by international. International means you're coming from far away, and you're coming from America and showing in Somerset. Absolutely, yes. But also, if you're sitting at your kitchen table and your work is cut to the size of your cloth, if you're only able to make work in a sketchbook and you're at your kitchen table, you're still valuable to the art world. The word international can be quite intimidating. Just means you come from a different place and you're going far away to show your work. So I also chair a charity which works with communities and engages with artists, and we build communities around one another. So whoever you are staring at me chatting away at the screen, think about who you are and what are you making? Are you actually in your living room doing it on your coffee table? Or do you have a big plush studio in the end of your garden? Or do you actually get in the car and drive away and pay rent for a big studio? You know, you'd be surprised to hear that I've looked at many, many artists and found some incredibly talented minds in the most beautiful places and the most humble places. I hope I'm getting my point across.
So, you hinted at this idea of community, and a lot of artists watching will, as you say, be working from their kitchen tables or from their bedrooms and not have a dedicated studio. And by the nature of being an artist, a lot of artists work in isolation. Do you feel that having a community is important? And maybe what are different ways that artists can build community for themselves?
I think building a community around yourself actually in any career is the most important thing you can do in life, even if you're introverted. I mean, many artists want a gallery so that they can give them a voice, because many artists are introspective and find it difficult to communicate about their own work. I think stepping out into the world and joining a community, whether that is an artist studios, if you're able to find the resource to join a community where other artists and other makers are joining up together, or there'll be communities around you if you look that you can join, so that you start to have those conversations and have those connections. And always, of course, the obvious, to go to exhibitions, to museums, and keep yourselves connected, even through social media and all that the world has to offer. It's much easier really to communicate now than it used to be. I think it's vital to keep yourselves present and engage with what's going on around you. That's where the opportunities come from. That's where you will get your break. The idea is that you continue to talk about your work, develop your work, and look at other people's work and see what they're doing and see if you can help them. I think there has to be a kind of quid for quo generosity of spirit. And if you do find that you can give of your practice and take of theirs, and then some growth will happen. And that's what we're all looking to. We're all looking to just keep growing and to keep learning.
Freeny, I've got loads more questions. Shall I give you a really juicy one?
Please.
Okay. Somebody asked, given your knowledge and experience nurturing artist careers, what would your top 3 pieces of advice be for those wishing to build their exposure and profile in a professional and authentic way?
Number 1, know your story. What title do you sit underneath? What's your story? I have my story, and I'm continuously reevaluating my story and who I am and what my offering is to the world. Know who you are in the world and where you stand. Whether you're on your own in the countryside, or you're right in the middle of a city, that is one of the most important things, I think, in life, actually. Never mind whether you're an artist, a curator, a presenter, you need to know your story. And so that when people ask you who you are, you have that refined and you can tell them exactly who you are. That sounds very easy. It's actually very difficult. Know who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it. Secondly, to really address the do's and the don'ts and the likes and the dislikes of the way that you work as an artist, if we're talking about artists. I think one of the difficulties of being an artist is that you have to structure your own life. So to put a structure in place, whether you're going to do yoga and your exercise before you start in the studio, or you're always going to wake up and do a drawing. I'd say having a sketchbook. I sound like an art mistress. Having a sketchbook and sketching a sketch every single day, or writing an intention every single day, is absolutely vital. And at the end of the week, reassessing what you've achieved. And then that feeds the month in, and then that feeds in the year. And then you start to see yourself again in the world. It's about looking at yourself as a microcosm and looking at yourself as part of the universe. It's so vital. Then that feeds into, okay, and what am I going to do with this knowledge? You're going to go out into the world and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to go to one thing a month, and then I'm going to do that to help myself and that to help someone else. I think giving to other people also. I volunteer at least 2 days a week to the charity that I run. I'm continuously going to art studios. I know of artists I'm not going to represent, but I want to help them and lead them onto their pathway. That's something I do because it feeds me and it feeds them. And I think it's a generous system that circulates, and you just work through, and good things happen as a result of it. It's impossible for it not to keep a healthy dialogue going within yourself and others. Does that help? I haven't answered the 3 questions, but the top priority is know who you are.
Thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch the full 1-hour interview and get top tips from an expert, then click the link below and join the Art Ladder mentoring program now. By joining the Art Ladder, you will get access to our full library of webinars with curators, collectors, critics, gallerists, and more. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this. And check out the description below for more free resources for artists.